Come to my favorite bookstore in town that my friends Jennifer and Victoria created.
I mean, I have embossers for my personal letters, my business. They're great.
I make hot breakfast most mornings for the kids and my husband.
I'm not an artist, I didn't like art class. I don't know who it's going to be for, but I know that I need to get it. It's called Furoshki. This is a masala daba, that's what this is called. I always want to be able to share it with someone who would appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I loved being here. So glad I came to visit.
Episode 3 of With Love Meghan was supposed to be a charming collaboration with Queer Eye's Tan France, but what we actually witnessed was 7 cringe-worthy moments of desperate celebrity validation seeking that made viewers genuinely uncomfortable. From over-the-top gift presentations to manufactured friendship energy, Meghan's need to impress her famous guest was so obvious it became painful to watch. Every interaction felt calculated to make Tan think she was sophisticated and worthy of his friendship, creating secondhand embarrassment for anyone viewing. The desperation wasn't subtle. She name-dropped her friends who own businesses, presented elaborate gifts she claimed she'd been saving for the perfect person, and tried so hard to seem culturally aware that it achieved the exact opposite effect. Wait until you see what happens in moment number 5 when she completely overplays her hand with an expensive vintage gift. What made these moments particularly uncomfortable was how obvious her tactics were to everyone except herself. Professional celebrities like Tan France are experts at recognizing performance versus genuine connection, and his polite but restrained responses told the real story. By the end of episode 3, it became clear that Meghan's approach to celebrity friendships is fundamentally transactional. She wasn't trying to know Tan as a person, she was trying to extract validation from him as a celebrity. Let's break down exactly how her desperate attempts to impress completely backfired and created some of the most uncomfortable television of the season. The first desperate attempt to impress Tan France came right at the episode's opening, when Meghan couldn't simply say she was buying books without turning it into a performance about her important connections. What should have been a straightforward task of selecting children's books for a guest became an elaborate showcase of her sophisticated network and cultural authority.
Come to my favorite bookstore in town that my friends Jennifer and Victoria created.
Notice how she couldn't just say my favorite bookstore without adding that her friends created it. This wasn't natural conversation. This was someone desperately trying to establish that she has successful creative friends who own businesses. The emphasis on ownership was particularly telling because it suggested she wanted Tan to understand she doesn't just shop at any random bookstore. She shops at establishments created by people in her personal circle. The desperation became even more obvious when she continued building up her sophisticated literary gift-giving credentials, as if buying children's books required some sort of expertise or cultural authority that needed to be established before the actual shopping could begin.
If a friend is coming and they have kids, one of the best gifts I think you can give is the gift of story.
She delivered that line like she was sharing profound wisdom about gift-giving, when she was literally just buying books for kids. The performative thoughtfulness was painful to watch because it revealed someone who thinks basic kindness needs to be packaged as lifestyle expertise. Real generosity doesn't require philosophical justification or presentation, as revolutionary thinking about human connection, but the performance didn't stop there. She had to demonstrate her personal investment in the selection process, showing that she wasn't just grabbing random books, but making thoughtful, meaningful choices that reflected her deep understanding of literature and childhood development.
Gotta start with It's Only Stanley, also because it looks like Guy.
The forced connection between a children's book character and her dog felt like someone desperately searching for conversation starters that would make her seem endearing and relatable. Professional hosts don't need to manufacture personal connections to every element of their content because their natural personality and genuine enthusiasm carry the show without artificial props. What made this opening sequence particularly uncomfortable was how calculated every element felt. The bookstore name drop established her cultural connections, the gift philosophy positioned her as thoughtfully generous, and the personal dog connection was meant to show her charming, relatable side. But when every moment serves a strategic purpose in building your image, nothing feels authentic anymore. The bookstore segment perfectly encapsulated her entire approach to celebrity relationships throughout the episode. Instead of just doing something nice for a guest's children, she had to turn it into a performance about her connections, her thoughtfulness, her cultural sophistication, and her personal charm. The desperation to impress was so obvious, it made what should have been a sweet gesture feel calculated and transactional. This pattern of turning simple activities into opportunities for validation and image building would define every single interaction she had with Tan throughout the entire episode. From the very first moment, she established that nothing could just be what it was. Everything had to serve the larger project of making her seem impressive to her celebrity guest. The most telling aspect was how unnecessary all of it was. Tan France is a genuinely warm, appreciative person who would have been perfectly happy with simple kindness. Instead, he got a performance designed to extract validation rather than create connection. The second desperate attempt to impress Tan came when Meghan turned basic gift wrapping into an elaborate showcase of her sophisticated taste and attention to detail. What should have been simple presentation became a performance designed to demonstrate her refined sensibilities and access to exclusive personalization services. The desperation started immediately when she couldn't just wrap books without explaining her advanced philosophy about gift presentation and the importance of making everything look professionally curated.
I think half of the joy of the gift is the presentation.
She delivered that observation like it was groundbreaking insight into human psychology, rather than something most people understand intuitively. The need to present basic gift wrapping concepts as sophisticated lifestyle knowledge revealed someone desperately trying to position herself as an authority on elegance and thoughtfulness. But the real performance began when she introduced her custom embossing tools, presenting them as if they were rare artifacts that demonstrated her commitment to personalized luxury and attention to detail.
And I had these embossers made online. They can be super affordable. These both say from the library of, and you can emboss the inside of their books.
The way she presented custom embossers as both exclusive and accessible showed someone trying to have it both ways. She wanted credit for the sophisticated touch of personalized embossing, while also appearing relatable by mentioning affordability. The contradiction revealed someone more concerned with impression management than authentic communication. The desperation intensified when she felt compelled to establish her broader embossing credentials, as if Tan might question whether she was truly committed to this level of personalization, or if this was just a one-off performance for his benefit.
I mean, I have embossers for my personal letters, my business.
They're great.
She couldn't let the embossing moment stand alone without proving she wasn't just showing off for him. She genuinely lived this elevated lifestyle all the time. The need to provide evidence of her consistent sophistication revealed deep insecurity about whether her performance was convincing enough to maintain credibility. What made this sequence particularly uncomfortable was how unnecessary the entire performance was. Tan France, as a professional in creative industries, would obviously appreciate thoughtful presentation without needing elaborate explanations of the philosophy behind it, or proof of her commitment to personalization in all areas of her life. The embossing demonstration perfectly encapsulated her fundamental misunderstanding of how to connect with celebrity guests. Instead of sharing a nice touch she thought he'd appreciate, she turned it into evidence of her overall sophistication and lifestyle authority. The difference between genuine thoughtfulness and performed expertise was painfully obvious. The most telling aspect was how she seemed to believe that demonstrating access to personalization services would impress someone who works in fashion and entertainment, industries where custom details are completely routine. Her excitement about basic embossing suggested someone trying to impress a professional with amateur-level touches they thought were sophisticated. This pattern of turning simple gestures into elaborate performances of expertise would continue throughout every interaction, making what should have been natural hosting feel like a constant audition for Tan's approval and validation. The embossing segment established that no detail was too small to become evidence of her refined taste and thoughtful nature. The desperation was so obvious because genuinely sophisticated people don't need to explain or justify their attention to detail, they just demonstrate it naturally through their choices and actions. The third desperate moment came when Meghan tried to establish herself as the ultimate domestic goddess through an elaborate performance about her family breakfast rituals. What should have been a simple cooking collaboration became an opportunity to demonstrate her superiority as a mother, wife, and household manager to someone who clearly excels in his own domestic life. The overperformance began when she couldn't just make French toast without positioning herself as someone who creates magical morning experiences for her family every single day, unlike presumably lesser parents who might resort to convenience.
I make hot breakfast most mornings for the kids and my husband.
But it's not as complicated as people think it is. This is so easy.
She delivered that line with obvious pride, as if daily breakfast preparation was some sort of extraordinary achievement that demonstrated her commitment to family excellence. The need to emphasize both the regularity of her efforts and dismiss the complexity suggested someone desperate to appear both dedicated and effortlessly capable. But the desperation intensified when she launched into detailed descriptions of her elaborate pancake preparations, complete with hidden nutritious ingredients and special names that supposedly delighted her children.
I always put some ground flax seeds
Oh, smart.
or some
Yeah.
chia seeds in.
Yeah.
And Lily will ask me, can I have my chia seeds? I want it to have freckles.
The cute story about her daughter asking for freckles felt manufactured to demonstrate both her nutritional consciousness and her children's sophisticated palates. Real parents don't need to prove their domestic excellence through perfectly timed anecdotes about their children's charming food preferences. The performance reached peak desperation when she felt compelled to explain her philosophy about breakfast presentation and the extra effort she puts into making meals visually appealing for her family.
See, one thing I do with my kids, I will say that takes a little bit more time. I like the presentation for that.
She couldn't just make attractive food without explaining that this represented conscious choices about parenting philosophy and time investment. The need to justify the extra effort suggested someone who wanted credit for going above and beyond normal parental expectations. What made this sequence particularly uncomfortable was how it positioned her domestic efforts against implied criticism of other approaches to family breakfast. By emphasizing her daily hot breakfast routine, her nutritional additions, and her presentation standards, she was essentially arguing that her way was superior to simpler approaches other families might choose. The desperation was most obvious in how she seemed to believe these domestic performances would impress Tan France, a successful professional who presumably values efficiency and authenticity over elaborate morning productions. Her excitement about breakfast theater suggested someone who thought impressive domestic performance would translate to celebrity approval. The breakfast ritual over performance revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of what makes hosting compelling. Instead of focusing on creating a pleasant experience for her guest, she turned their cooking time into an opportunity to demonstrate her superiority as a family manager and domestic goddess. The most telling aspect was how she seemed unaware that professional people like Tan typically appreciate practical approaches to daily life, rather than elaborate performances that require significant time investment. Her breakfast theater was designed to impress someone who probably values the opposite qualities in domestic management. This pattern of turning simple activities into evidence of her exceptional standards and dedication would continue throughout every segment, making what should have been relaxed cooking feel like a constant demonstration of her worthiness for celebrity friendship and validation. The fourth desperate attempt to impress Tan came when Meghan transformed simple craft activities into an elaborate performance of her global cultural knowledge and sophisticated aesthetic sensibilities. What should have been straightforward apron decorating became an opportunity to demonstrate her worldliness and artistic authority to someone whose professional background actually encompasses these areas. The charade began when she couldn't just suggest painting aprons without establishing her credentials as someone who understands both traditional and innovative approaches to fabric decoration, as if basic craft knowledge required extensive qualification. The desperation became obvious when she started explaining vegetable stamping as if she had discovered some revolutionary technique rather than sharing a common elementary school art activity that most parents already know about.
So can I show you a couple?
I would love,
a couple
yeah.
ideas here. Just bear with me. You're like, now the woman's getting some celery.
All right.
out.
Her self-conscious commentary about getting celery revealed someone who knew her demonstration might seem basic, but was hoping enthusiasm and presentation could elevate simple techniques into impressive expertise. The nervous explanation suggested deep awareness that her craft knowledge might not measure up to professional standards. But the performance intensified when she felt compelled to establish her artistic background and explain why she was qualified to teach creative techniques, despite admitting significant limitations in her actual artistic abilities.
Yes, but I would not classify myself as artistic. I'm not an artist. I didn't like art class.
Oh, okay.
I always did calligraphy. So I guess I had an eye for things, but I couldn't paint you a picture.
The contradiction of positioning herself as a craft teacher while simultaneously disclaiming artistic ability created an uncomfortable tension. She wanted credit for creative expertise without having the actual skills to back up that authority, resulting in a confusing presentation that undermined her credibility. The charade reached peak desperation when she tried to demonstrate various stamping techniques with vegetables and kitchen items, presenting basic craft supplies as if she was introducing innovative artistic methods that would revolutionize home decorating approaches.
So we end up having a whole world of things we can do.
Her excitement about potato stamps and citrus prints felt disproportionate to the actual creativity involved, suggesting someone who believed enthusiasm could compensate for the elementary nature of the techniques she was sharing. The whole world comment particularly highlighted the disconnect between her perception of these activities and their actual complexity level. What made this sequence particularly uncomfortable was how she seemed unaware that Tan France, as a professional in fashion and design, would obviously know far more sophisticated approaches to fabric decoration and textile arts than vegetable stamping. Her excitement about basic craft techniques suggested someone trying to impress an expert with beginner-level knowledge. The cultural expertise charade revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of how to engage with professionals in creative fields. Instead of acknowledging his superior knowledge and asking for his insights, she positioned herself as the teacher sharing revolutionary techniques with someone whose career actually encompasses advanced understanding of design, color, and textile work. The most telling aspect was how she seemed to believe that demonstrating familiarity with basic craft techniques would establish her creative credibility with someone who works at the highest levels of fashion and entertainment design. Her craft performance was designed to impress someone who probably learned more sophisticated techniques in design school than she was demonstrating. This pattern of performing expertise in areas where she clearly had limited knowledge would continue throughout the episode, creating increasingly uncomfortable moments where her desperation to appear accomplished became impossible to ignore. The fifth and perhaps most desperate moment came when Meghan unveiled her elaborate masala daba gift presentation, turning what could have been a simple gesture into a calculated performance designed to extract maximum emotional impact and gratitude from her celebrity guest. This wasn't generosity, this was manipulation disguised as thoughtfulness. The desperation was immediately obvious when she couldn't just give Tan a gift without creating an elaborate backstory about her prescient shopping habits and her ability to recognize the perfect recipient for special items.
Sometimes when I go to shops and I find something that I think is just extraordinary. I don't know who it's going to be for, but I know that I need to get it.
This setup was clearly designed to make her seem like someone with sophisticated intuition about gift giving. Someone so attuned to finding special objects that she purchases them speculatively for future perfect moments. The performance suggested someone who wanted credit for being thoughtfully prescient rather than simply generous in the moment. But the manipulation intensified when she created a detailed narrative about discovering this particular item and somehow knowing it was destined for someone special, building anticipation and emotional investment before the reveal.
So maybe a year or so ago, we went into this little shop in North Carolina and I found this.
The timeline felt
Container.
suspiciously convenient.
This is a
She claimed to have
Masala Daba,
purchased
that's
this
what this is
expensive
called.
vintage item a year
I
ago,
just thought it
while
was
somehow knowing she would
fantastic,
eventually
and
meet
knowing his
Tan
love of
France and
spices, I
discover
thought,
his love of
this is the person
spices.
I wanna
The
share
story
with.
was clearly crafted to make the gift seem more meaningful and her generosity more thoughtful and long-term rather than situational. The desperation reached peak manipulation when she revealed the gift with elaborate cultural context and emotional language designed to maximize impact and gratitude.
This is a Masala Daba, that's what this is called. I just thought it was fantastic, and knowing his love of spices, I thought, this is the person I want to share it with.
Her delivery suggested someone who had researched the proper terminology and cultural significance specifically to impress Tan with her knowledge and respect for his heritage. The presentation felt calculated to demonstrate both her cultural awareness and her thoughtfulness about finding the perfect recipient. What made this sequence particularly uncomfortable was how obviously the entire scenario was designed to create a debt of gratitude and emotional connection. The elaborate backstory, the cultural significance, the supposed year-long search for the right person, all of it was crafted to make Tan feel special and indebted to her thoughtfulness. The manipulation was most obvious in how she seemed to expect and wait for his emotional response, clearly anticipating that the presentation would create the kind of meaningful moment that would cement their connection and validate her as someone worthy of his friendship and appreciation. The vintage gift manipulation revealed her fundamental approach to celebrity relationships as transactional rather than authentic. Instead of getting to know Tan and then finding something he might appreciate, she used an expensive, culturally significant object as a tool to create artificial intimacy and extract validation from him. The most telling aspect was how the entire presentation felt more about her than about him. The elaborate backstory, the cultural knowledge display, the perfect timing, all of it was designed to showcase her as thoughtful, intuitive, and culturally aware, rather than to simply give him something nice. This wasn't generosity, it was emotional manipulation disguised as gift-giving, and the calculation behind every element of the presentation was painfully obvious to anyone watching the performance unfold. The sixth desperate moment arrived when Meghan transformed basic gift wrapping into an elaborate display of her international cultural knowledge and sophisticated aesthetic sensibilities. What should have been a simple demonstration became a calculated performance designed to showcase her worldliness and expertise in traditional Japanese arts to someone who would obviously recognize authentic cultural knowledge versus performative displays. The desperation was immediately apparent when she couldn't just wrap a gift without establishing extensive credentials about her friend's influence on her cultural awareness and her deep understanding of sustainable wrapping practices. The cultural performance intensified when she introduced the Japanese wrapping technique with the kind of reverence and detailed explanation typically reserved for sacred ceremonies rather than practical gift presentation methods.
My friend Vicky, one of the things that she's done a lot when she gives gifts is a Japanese style of wrapping where you use fabric. It's called furoshiki.
Her delivery of the Japanese term suggested someone who had carefully researched the pronunciation and cultural context specifically to demonstrate her respect for and knowledge of international traditions. The emphasis on her friend's influence was clearly designed to show she learned this from someone sophisticated rather than discovering it through casual internet browsing. But the performance reached peak cultural appropriation territory when she launched into an elaborate explanation of the environmental and philosophical benefits of this traditional practice, positioning herself as an authority on Japanese cultural values and sustainable living practices.
And essentially, it's a great way to upcycle, use, and reuse fabric for wrapping a gift.
Her explanation reduced a traditional Japanese art form to modern sustainability buzzwords, demonstrating exactly the kind of surface-level cultural understanding that reveals someone who learned about something through lifestyle blogs rather than genuine cultural study. The focus on upcycling and reuse completely missed the deeper cultural significance of furoshiki in Japanese gift-giving traditions. The desperation became most obvious when she felt compelled to share additional shopping tips about where to find materials for this practice, as if she was now qualified to teach others how to engage with Japanese cultural traditions based on her recent discovery of the technique.
I think it's really fun if you can go to a vintage shop as well and just get old vintage scarves for like $1 a piece.
The casual suggestion about buying dollar scarves for traditional Japanese wrapping revealed someone who completely failed to understand the cultural respect and intentionality that authentic furoshiki practice requires. Her approach treated the technique as a trendy DIY project rather than engaging with its actual cultural meaning. What made this sequence particularly uncomfortable was how she seemed unaware that Tan France, as someone who works internationally in fashion and design, would immediately recognize the difference between authentic cultural appreciation and performative cultural knowledge. Her excitement about discovering furoshiki suggested someone trying to impress a professional with information he undoubtedly already knew. The cultural performance revealed her fundamental approach to international awareness as collecting impressive techniques and terminology, rather than developing genuine understanding or respect for cultural traditions. She seemed to believe that demonstrating familiarity with Japanese terms and sustainable practices would establish her as culturally sophisticated and globally minded. The most telling aspect was how she turned a traditional art form into evidence of her own progressive values and aesthetic sophistication, rather than showing genuine respect for the cultural context from which it emerged. Her furoshiki demonstration was designed to showcase her worldliness rather than honor the tradition itself. This pattern of performing cultural knowledge without understanding would continue throughout the episode, creating increasingly uncomfortable moments where her desperation to appear internationally sophisticated became impossible to ignore. The seventh and final desperate moment came during the beach conclusion, when Meghan orchestrated what was clearly meant to be a perfect ending that would cement their friendship and extract maximum validation from Tan about their time together. What should have been a natural wind-down became a calculated performance designed to create the kind of meaningful moment that would justify all her previous efforts to impress him. The desperation was immediately obvious in how she staged the entire beach setting as if she was directing a lifestyle photo shoot, rather than simply enjoying time with a guest. The perfectly timed sunset, the carefully arranged refreshments, the strategic blanket placement, all of it felt designed to create Instagram-worthy moments. Rath C4M. The validation harvest began when she couldn't just enjoy the evening without fishing for compliments about her hosting abilities and the overall experience she had created for him.
But I'm glad you came to visit.
I'm so glad I came to
Thanks
visit.
for making the effort.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. I loved being here.
Her emphasis on the effort she had made was clearly designed to prompt acknowledgement of all the work she had put into impressing him. Real hosts don't need guests to recognize their effort because they're motivated by genuine pleasure and hospitality rather than validation seeking through elaborate productions. But the desperation intensified when she seemed to wait for him to elaborate on what specifically he had enjoyed about their time together, creating awkward pauses where she was obviously hoping for more detailed praise about her cooking, her gifts, her cultural knowledge, and her overall hosting excellence. The validation harvest reached peak desperation when she tried to create a profound moment about their connection and the meaning of their shared experience, clearly hoping to establish that this had been more than just a pleasant visit, but something truly special that cemented their friendship. The most telling aspect of this sequence was how she seemed to need Tan to articulate the specialness of their time together, rather than simply enjoying whatever connection they had naturally created. Her fishing for validation revealed someone who couldn't trust that the experience had been worthwhile without external confirmation from her celebrity guest. What made this moment particularly uncomfortable was how obvious her need for validation was to someone like Tan France, who undoubtedly experiences this kind of desperate celebrity-adjacent behavior regularly in his professional life. His polite responses suggested someone who recognized the performance but was too kind to call it out directly. The desperate validation harvest revealed the fundamental emptiness at the heart of her entire approach to celebrity relationships. Instead of finding satisfaction in genuine connection or personal growth through meeting interesting people, she needed constant confirmation that she had impressed him, that their time together was meaningful, and that she had successfully elevated herself in his estimation. The beach conclusion perfectly encapsulated everything that had been wrong with the entire episode. Rather than allowing natural appreciation and connection to emerge organically from shared activities and conversation, she had spent the entire day performing for validation, and ended by harvesting the emotional payoff she felt she had earned through her elaborate efforts. The most concerning aspect was how she seemed genuinely unaware that her desperation for celebrity validation was so obvious it had colored every interaction they shared. Her approach to friendship appeared fundamentally transactional, focused on what she could extract from the relationship rather than what she could contribute to it. This desperate validation harvest represented the culmination of all 7 attempts to impress Tan France, revealing someone whose need for celebrity approval had completely overwhelmed any possibility of authentic human connection. Episode 3 of With Love Meghan wasn't just awkward television, it was a complete masterclass in how desperate celebrity validation seeking can destroy any possibility of authentic connection. What we witnessed weren't 7 moments of charming hosting, but 7 calculated attempts to extract approval from a famous guest who was clearly just trying to be polite. From the opening bookstore name-dropping to the final beach validation harvest, every single interaction felt designed to prove Meghan's worthiness for celebrity friendship rather than create genuine human connection. The embossing expertise, breakfast ritual, overperformance, cultural charade, gift manipulation, and furoshiki performance all served the same desperate purpose. What made these moments particularly uncomfortable was how obvious the tactics were to everyone except Meghan herself. Tan France, as a professional celebrity, has undoubtedly experienced this kind of desperate behavior countless times, and his polite but restrained responses throughout the episode told the real story about how these interactions actually felt. The most concerning aspect was how transactional her entire approach to friendship appeared to be. Instead of getting to know Tan as a person and finding natural points of connection, she treated the entire day as an opportunity to demonstrate her sophistication, cultural awareness, generosity, and domestic excellence in hopes of earning his approval and validation. Having watched all 8 episodes of this season, I can tell you that episode 3's desperate celebrity validation seeking was just a preview of even more uncomfortable dynamics to come. The pattern of performing for famous guests rather than connecting with them as human beings continues throughout the season, creating increasingly awkward viewing experiences. The tragedy isn't that Meghan failed to impress Tan France. The tragedy is that she was so focused on impressing him that she missed the opportunity to actually get to know someone who seems genuinely kind and interesting as a person, rather than just as a celebrity validation source. So which of these 7 desperate moments made you cringe the hardest? Was it the vintage gift manipulation, the cultural expertise performance, or maybe the final beach validation harvest? Drop your thoughts below because honestly, the secondhand embarrassment from this episode was almost too much to handle. Smash that like button if this breakdown helped you understand why every interaction felt so uncomfortable to watch. Subscribe because we've got 5 more episodes of celebrity validation desperation to analyze, and hit that notification bell because episode 4 somehow manages to make this look subtle by comparison. The desperate celebrity thirst we exposed today is just getting started, people.